1. Bart was used as a human test subject.
Watch out! He's got his probe!
Bart Simpson disappears in one of Hit and Run's strangest moments. After escaping the chaos of the Truckosaurus show, he steps outside, notices a strange light above him, and is suddenly pulled into the sky by an unseen spacecraft. By the time Lisa finally tracks him down at Springfield Harbor, something is clearly wrong.
Bart! I found you!
Bart is alive, but the kid she finds aboard the Sea Spanker barely resembles the brother who disappeared. His memories are fragmented. His speech has collapsed into confused phrases about black sedans and Buzz Cola. He can't properly explain where he's been or what happened to him. The game plays his condition for laughs, but underneath the comedy is an uncomfortable question it never completely answers. What happened to Bart between the moment he entered that tractor beam and the moment Lisa found him? The answer begins to emerge when Marge investigates his strange condition. Grandpa remembers seeing a mysterious symbol in the crop circles around Springfield, and Marge eventually realizes that the design resembles the Buzz Cola logo. When she shows it to Bart, something remarkable happens.
Recognize this design? That's the alien mind control cola. They gave us tons of that up in the alien spaceship. They're using it to make the town go crazy.
The image appears to trigger his memory. Bart suddenly becomes coherent and remembers the spacecraft. More importantly, he remembers what the aliens gave him while he was there. Tons of Buzz Cola. That detail changes the entire abduction. Buzz Cola isn't an ordinary drink. Bart identifies it as the substance being used to manipulate Springfield's population and make people lose control. Yet aboard the spacecraft, the aliens apparently exposed a 10-year-old boy to enormous quantities of it. Bart disappears as a healthy child and returns confused, amnesic, and trapped in what Marge describes as a trance.
Bart, what's causing your ooga booga talk?
The game never explicitly calls this an experiment, but the sequence looks disturbingly close to one. And there's one tiny word in Bart's explanation that makes the mystery even stranger. He doesn't say the aliens gave me tons of Buzz Cola. He says they gave us tons of it aboard the spaceship. Maybe it's nothing more than a loose dialogue. But if Bart meant exactly what he said, then who was us? Were there other captives aboard the spacecraft? Other people exposed to the same substance? The game never shows them, and there's no evidence proving that other children were taken, so the question remains unanswered. What we do know is disturbing enough. Bart was abducted, exposed to massive amounts of alien substance designed to alter human behavior, and returned unable to clearly remember what had happened. Only when confronted with the symbol connected to that substance do his buried memories suddenly return. Maybe Bart wasn't simply kidnapped. Maybe he was the first person in Springfield to discover what Buzz Cola could do to a human mind, because somebody had already tested it on him.
Apu, I think you should be aware that you're selling a tainted cola. Where's this stuff coming from?
Oh, there is little here not tainted in some way. Even the astrology scrolls give poor advice. But I will get to the bottom of this.
Well, it made Bart go crazy. And if I find the distributor, I'm gonna give them a piece of my mind.
Careful, Mrs. Simpson. This cola makes people do irrational things without guilt. It is as though they have bottled the effects of a raging frat kegger.
That's it. I'm going after it. And any other evil cola trucks I can find.
Layer 1. Buzz Cola can reanimate dead flesh.
Is terrible.
Buzz Cola, the taste you'll kill for.
Available in the lobby.
At first, Buzz Cola seems like a simple explanation for what happened to Bart. An alien substance capable of altering the human mind. But deeper into Hit and Run, the game reveals an effect that makes Bart's exposure considerably more disturbing. While investigating the mysterious cola, Bart and Apu eventually reach the Springfield Museum, where they discover its apparent source. A strange meteor dripping the substance inside the building. Then, almost casually, a single drop falls into the museum's Tyrannosaurus Rex display. Its eyes suddenly grow red. The skeleton begins to move. Something that has been dead for millions of years has apparently been brought back to life. And this happens before Springfield's zombie outbreak, meaning the game quietly shows us exactly what Buzz Cola is capable of, long before the cemetery fills with the dead. Later, that isolated museum incident becomes something much larger. Buzz Cola contaminates Springfield's groundwater, eventually reaching the cemetery beneath the town. The result isn't poisoning or hallucination. Corpses physically climb out of their graves and begin wandering Springfield. Suddenly, the T-Rex wasn't just a Halloween gag. It was a warning. Buzz Cola can alter the behavior of living humans, but apparently it doesn't require a functioning human mind to work. It can animate a skeleton and resurrect buried corpses. And that creates a problem with the game's own description of it as mind control cola. A skeleton doesn't have a living brain to control, so whatever Kang and Kodos put inside those cans must be doing something far stranger than manipulating thoughts. Maybe it stimulates biological activity. Maybe it's some form of extraterrestrial technology. Or perhaps Hit and Run is showing us something that doesn't fit any normal definition of life at all. And that brings us straight back to Bart. The aliens didn't expose him to an ordinary drug that simply makes people aggressive. They gave him enormous quantities of the same substance that can apparently force dead organisms to move again. We never learn exactly how Buzz Cola works, and that's what makes the implication so unsettling. In a living person, it can interfere with judgment, memory, and behavior. In something dead, it can seemingly restart whatever process separates an unmoving corpse from an animated one. Bart survived his exposure, but he returned in a trance with fragmented memories and an inability to explain what happened aboard the spacecraft. If Buzz Cola is powerful enough to make the dead walk again, then perhaps the real mystery isn't why Bart was acting strangely after his abduction. It's what that substance was doing inside his living body, while the aliens kept giving him more of it. Layer 1. Springfield has been secretly filmed. Long before Bart disappears, or anyone understands what Buzz Cola really is, Hit and Run quietly tells us that Springfield has another problem. Someone is watching. Strange mechanical wasp cameras are scattered throughout the town, hovering above streets, neighborhoods, businesses, and other places where ordinary people go about their lives. At first, they feel like another ridiculous enemy for Homer to destroy. But an early news report reveals that the problem is much larger. Surveillance cameras have reportedly been discovered across Springfield, including inside bathrooms, locker rooms, and women's dressing rooms. The joke is delivered with the usual Simpsons humor, but the implication is remarkably invasive. Whoever installed these cameras isn't simply monitoring traffic or important locations. They're deliberately placing surveillance equipment in spaces where people expect privacy. And at this point in the story, nobody in Springfield knows who is responsible or where the footage is going. The answer doesn't arrive until Bart and Apu follow the Buzz Cola conspiracy into the Springfield Museum and overhear Kang and Kodos discussing something called foolish earthlings. What they reveal completely changes the meaning of every wasp camera the player has destroyed. Springfield has unknowingly become the subject of an extraterrestrial reality television program. The cameras hidden around the town have been recording human behavior and transmitting it to televisions across the galaxy, where alien audiences watch ordinary people embarrass themselves for entertainment. Even more unsettling, Kang and Kodos talk about the program as something that already had an established audience. Foolish Earthlings used to be one of the galaxy's biggest reality shows, but its ratings have started falling. That means the surveillance didn't begin when Homer noticed the cameras. By the time Hit and Run starts, Springfield has already been entertainment for an unseen audience. the game simply never tells us how long they've been watching. And that might be the most disturbing part. Somewhere beyond Earth, an entire audience potentially knows Springfield's residents without those residents knowing anything about them. They've watched Homer, Bart, Willie, and countless others live their lives through hidden cameras. Arguments become comedy, accidents become entertainment, and even locations like bathrooms and dressing rooms have apparently been infiltrated by the surveillance network. We don't know exactly what was recorded there, and the game never establishes that every citizen or every private moment was captured. But the cameras clearly weren't designed around human ideas of consent or privacy. To Kang and Kodos, the people below aren't individuals who deserve either. They're characters on a television show. And when those characters eventually stop being entertaining, the aliens don't simply cancel the program. They begin looking for ways to make Springfield more exciting. Which leaves one uncomfortable question hanging over everything we've seen so far. If Springfield only discovered the cameras now, how long had the rest of the galaxy already been watching it? Layer 2. Someone tried to stop Grandpa from remembering. Long before Marge questions Grandpa, Hit and Run establishes a strange connection between Bart's disappearance and the mysterious black sedans roaming Springfield. While Lisa is searching for her missing brother, Grandpa tells her that he saw Bart's lucky red hat fall from one of these vehicles. Lisa spends part of her investigation chasing and destroying the sedans, but she never learns exactly who is operating them or why something belonging to Bart was apparently inside one. Eventually, she finds Bart alive, and the black cars fade into the background. But one level later, they return under much stranger circumstances. Marge is now trying to understand the crop circles appearing around Springfield, and Hans Moleman tells her that Grandpa may know something about them. There's only one problem. When Marge reaches him, Grandpa can't give her the information she needs because he is missing his medication. Somehow, one of the few people capable of explaining the strange symbol connected to Bart's abduction has suddenly lost the very thing he needs to remember it. Marge traces the missing medication to Nelson and the bullies at Springfield Elementary, where Nelson gives her a bizarre explanation. They stole Grandpa's pills and traded them to some men in a black car in exchange for magazines. Marge tracks down the vehicle and discovers that it's another one of the same mysterious black chase sedans seen throughout the game. As she pursues it, Grandpa's medication spills onto the road until she manages to recover every bottle. But the strangest part happens afterward. Once Marge has the pills, another black sedan appears and actively chases her as she tries to return to the retirement castle. On its own, this could simply be another absurd Simpsons joke about shady men buying prescription medication from children. But placed beside everything we've already seen, the timing becomes difficult to ignore. Black sedans were connected to Bart while he was missing. Now another one has obtained medication belonging to a man whose memories could help explain what happened to him. And when Marge gets that medication back, someone tries to stop her from returning it. Once Grandpa receives his pills, the entire investigation suddenly moves forward. His memory returns enough for him to describe the crop circle symbol, which Marge realizes resembles the Buzz Cola logo. She shows that symbol to Bart. His trance breaks, and the memories of his abduction finally begin to come back. Without Grandpa's testimony, Marge may never have made that connection. The game never confirms that anyone deliberately stole his medication to silence him, and the bullies themselves appear to have taken the pills for completely unrelated reasons. But that leaves an even stranger question. Why did the people in the black sedan want them? Maybe they were nothing more than criminals buying stolen medication. Maybe the connection to Bart's disappearance is a coincidence. Or maybe Grandpa had unknowingly become something much more dangerous. A witness who remembered something somebody didn't want the Simpsons to understand. Layer 2. Who is in Snake's trunk? Snake Jailbird is treated like a joke throughout The Simpsons. He's Springfield's permanently armed criminal, casually robbing stores and threatening anyone unlucky enough to cross his path. Hit and Run plays into that reputation, but during Lisa's search for Bart, the game gives Snake a crime considerably darker than his usual robberies. Lisa needs Chief Wiggum's help investigating her brother's disappearance, but Wiggum is more interested in building a case against Snake under Springfield's 3 strikes law. So Lisa agrees to help collect the evidence. The first items are exactly the kind of ridiculous crimes we'd expect: counterfeit jeans and litter. Then, Snake drops the next piece of evidence onto the road.
Strike 2, running over an elderly person without a license.
It's the body of an elderly person. Evidence connected to Snake apparently running someone over. Lisa picks up the corpse like any other mission collectible, and the game immediately moves on. But there's another detail hidden inside Snake's car that makes that scene much harder to dismiss. Snake drives his recognizable purple Bandit throughout the game, and if the vehicle becomes damaged enough, the trunk area can be exposed. Look closely inside, and there's something that appears disturbingly human. A long, body-shaped object, wrapped in material and hidden in the back of the car. It's easy to miss because most players are busy driving, escaping police, or watching the vehicle fall apart. Yet once you know it's there, the obvious question becomes unavoidable. Earlier, the game explicitly connected Snake to the death of an elderly person. Now, his personal vehicle appears to contain something resembling a wrapped corpse. Hit and Run never directly tells us that these are the same thing, and there's no developer confirmation proving the object was intended to represent that specific victim. But the coincidence creates one of the game's creepiest pieces of environmental storytelling. So who is actually inside Snake's car? We shouldn't turn him into a secret serial killer. The crime involving the elderly victim is presented more like vehicular manslaughter than premeditated murder. And nothing in the game establishes a pattern of hidden killings. But that almost makes the discovery stranger. There doesn't need to be a conspiracy here. Springfield may simply be a place where a man can kill someone with his car, drive around with what appears to be a wrapped body in the trunk, and have the evidence collected by an 8-year-old girl while the police chief treats the entire thing as another routine arrest. Maybe the object in The Bandit is only a dark visual gag. Maybe it's meant to represent the victim from Snake's crime. The game never gives the body a name, a story, or even another mention. Somewhere in Springfield, an elderly person apparently died, and Hit and Run turns their corpse into something the player can collect before driving away. Layer 2. Something is wrong with Camp Krusty. Hidden beyond Springfield's familiar streets is one of Hit and Run's most unsettling locations, Camp Krusty. At first, it looks like another abandoned landmark pulled directly from the television series. But exploring the camp reveals details that feel strangely out of place in a colorful driving game. Near the grounds is a pig's head mounted on a spear, left exposed as flies swarm around it. Elsewhere, a well drops the player into a hidden underground route that eventually carries them away from the camp through Springfield's drainage system. Even the flagpole contains a secret. Interacting with it replaces the Camp Krusty flag with another name, Camp Bart. None of these details are random. They're remnants of something that happened here before the events of Hit and Run. When a summer camp supposedly built for children became so miserable that the children themselves eventually took control. Camp Krusty's history comes from the original Simpsons episode, where Bart and Lisa arrive expecting the kind of summer vacation Krusty's advertisements promised. Instead, the camp is effectively a corporate nightmare. The children are given terrible food, forced into exhaustive activities, bullied by older campers, and even made to produce crusty merchandise while the adults responsible for them enjoy better treatment. Krusty himself isn't supervising anything. His image has simply been licensed to people exploiting the children beneath it. Eventually, Bart had enough. He organizes the campers, overthrows the counselors, takes control of the grounds, and replaces the Camp Krusty flag with Camp Bart. The episode deliberately echoes Lord of the Flies, the famous story about children isolated from adult authority and descending into their own increasingly violent society. That's why the pig's head matters. In Hit and Run, it isn't evidence of some unknown murder. It's a deliberate visual reminder of what Camp Krusty became when the adults failed the children living there. That makes the location much creepier than a mysterious abandoned camp because we already know what happened. The children weren't attacked by some hidden monster in the woods. They were neglected and exploited by the people who were supposed to protect them until rebellion became their only way out. Years later, Hit and Run lets the player return to those grounds and quietly preserves the symbols of that uprising. Camp Bart can still fly above the property. The Lord of the Flies imagery remains planted in the earth. And strange passages still run beneath the camp. The game never suggests that children were murdered there or that the underground route hides some forgotten crime. And those claims would go beyond the evidence. The darker interpretation is simpler. Camp Krusty doesn't need a ghost story because its disturbing history already happened, and the children were the ones who had to save themselves. Layer 3. Burns has been poisoning Springfield for years.
Come and get me. I'll pay you in back rubs.
By the final night of Hit and Run, Springfield has survived alien surveillance, Buzz Cola, and an outbreak of the Walking Dead. But when Homer needs a way to destroy the alien spacecraft, Lisa reveals that one of the town's greatest threats was already beneath her feet long before Kang and Kodos arrived. She tells Homer to find Mr. Burns because his illegal buried nuclear waste has poisoned Springfield for years to come. It's delivered like another joke about Burns' complete disregard for human life, but the implication is enormous. This isn't one accidental spill or a leaking barrel forgotten behind the power plant. When Homer confronts Burns, he receives a map showing multiple locations where radioactive waste has been buried around Springfield. Somewhere beneath the neighborhoods, businesses, schools, and roads we've spent the entire game exploring is enough illegal discarded nuclear material to become ammunition in the final battle. What makes this more disturbing is how ordinary everyone treats it. Lisa already knows Springfield has been contaminated. Burns apparently remembers where the waste is buried well enough to produce a map. Homer doesn't demand to know how much radioactive material exists beneath his hometown, or whether his family has been living near it. He simply starts digging it up. During the final missions, the player physically transports unstable barrels of nuclear waste through Springfield, and damaging the cargo badly enough can force the player to start again. The same hazardous material Burns has spent years hiding beneath the community is now being driven past homes and public streets because Springfield desperately needs it. The pollution has become so deeply embedded in the town. During an extraterrestrial invasion, Springfield's environmental disaster becomes one of its most useful resources. And that leaves a question the game never answers. How much of Springfield has actually been contaminated? We shouldn't assume Burns' waste explains every mutation, illness, or bizarre resident in the series, because Hit and Run never establishes that connection. The confirmed reality is disturbing enough. One of Springfield's richest and most powerful men has knowingly buried radioactive material around the same community whose electricity makes him wealthy, and Lisa believes the consequences will last for years. Nobody shuts the plant down. Nobody evacuates the town. Nobody even seems surprised. Springfield simply continues existing above whatever Burns has left underground. Maybe the darkest part isn't that Mr. Burns poisoned the town, but it's that Springfield appears to have known and learned to live with it. Layer 3. The nuclear plant is one button from disaster. Mr. Burns hiding radioactive waste around Springfield is disturbing enough. But Hit and Run suggests the problem begins before that waste ever leaves the nuclear power plant. Unlike many games where dangerous industrial buildings exist only as scenery, Springfield's plant is somewhere the player can actually enter and explore. Drive through the facility, and there are almost no meaningful barriers separating an ordinary visitor from potentially hazardous equipment. One of the strangest examples is a control-marked vent, accompanied by the kind of warning that should probably never appear beside an accessible nuclear control. Do not press. Naturally, the player can press it. The machinery activates and radioactive emissions are released. There is no security code, protective equipment, or emergency response. Springfield's nuclear infrastructure can apparently be manipulated simply because someone walking past was curious enough to touch the button. Then, there's Homer's workstation. Interacting with another control triggers alarms and what appears to be a reactor emergency or meltdown sequence. The game doesn't establish that the player has literally caused a full nuclear meltdown. The plant remains standing afterward, so claiming Springfield can canonically be destroyed by pulling one lever would exaggerate what we see. But the joke reveals something arguably more unsettling. These controls are accessible enough that people like Homer Simpson are trusted to work beside them every day. The same employee famous for sleeping at his station and ignoring basic safety procedures apparently occupies a position where catastrophic warning systems can be triggered almost casually. And Hit and Run doesn't isolate this area behind layers of security. The nuclear plant functions as part of the playable environment, with sections that can effectively become another route through Springfield. Taken together with Burns' buried waste, this starts to look less like one corrupt billionaire secretly breaking environmental laws, and more like an entire safety system that has stopped functioning. Hazardous materials leak from the facility. Dangerous controls can be activated by anyone who reaches them. And the people responsible for preventing disaster behave as though this is normal. Springfield doesn't need Kang and Kodos to create a catastrophe. It already has one of the most dangerous pieces of infrastructure imaginable, operating beside its homes under almost non-existent oversight. Maybe the reason Burns was able to contaminate the town for so long isn't simply that he's powerful. Maybe Springfield's nuclear power plant was never truly designed to keep Springfield safe in the first place. Layer 3. The Stonecutter's secret nuclear route. Beneath Springfield's ordinary roads is another route most of its residents were never supposed to use. Hidden beside Mr. Burns' estate is the Stonecutter's private tunnel, an underground passage decorated with paintings and accompanied by classic music that eventually leads directly into Springfield's nuclear power plant. For most players, it's simply a convenient shortcut and a reference to the classic episode, Homer the Great. But after discovering that Burns has buried radioactive waste around Springfield and that the plant itself appears dangerously unsecured, the location starts to look different. One of the town's most sensitive facilities has a second entrance running underground, and that entrance belongs to a secret society whose membership includes some of Springfield's most influential people. The Stonecutters aren't a collection of anonymous conspiracy theorists hiding outside society. Their members include Mr. Burns, Mayor Quimby, Chief Wiggum, Dr. Hybert, Principal Skinner, Smithers, Krusty, Professor Frink, Apu, and many other recognizable Springfield residents. Between them, they touch almost every institution that should theoretically keep the town functioning: business, government, law enforcement, medicine, education, media, and nuclear power. Hit and Run never tells us that the Stonecutters helped Burns bury radioactive waste, or that they secretly control the plant, and there is no evidence strong enough to make either claim. But what the game does give us is something more concrete. A hidden piece of infrastructure physically connecting their world to Mr. Burns' property and the nuclear facility. Ordinary citizens sit in traffic above ground, while Springfield's elite have their own passage beneath them. That makes the tunnel an uncomfortable final piece of Layer 3. First, we discover that Burns has contaminated Springfield with illegally buried nuclear waste. Then, we explore a power plant where dangerous controls appear almost casually accessible. Now, underneath both of those discoveries, we find a private route used by a secret organization containing the town's mayor, police chief, richest businessmen, doctors, educators, and other powerful figures. Maybe it's nothing more than the game's recreation of a famous television joke. But within Hit and Run's version of Springfield, the conspiracy physically exists beneath the city, whether the player thinks about it or not. We can't prove the Stonecutters knew what Burns was doing. We can't prove that they protected him. But when the people who might investigate the pollution, enforce the law, run the government, and operate the plant all belong to the same secret club, the more interesting question becomes, if somebody inside Springfield's most powerful circle did know the truth, who exactly was left to hold them accountable? Layer 4. The Screaming Children and Lost Area Legend. For years, one of the strangest stories surrounding the Simpsons Hit and Run wasn't about something players were supposed to find. It was about what existed beyond the map. By escaping Springfield's normal boundaries, players could reach unfinished areas containing incomplete terrain, inaccessible buildings, and pieces of scenery never designed to be explored up close. Eventually, stories began circulating about one location in particular. A mysterious house hidden outside the playable world, supposedly accompanied by distorted voices, screaming children, and even a warning from Jimbo telling the player to leave. Some versions of the story gave the place names like Area 939, transforming an ordinary piece of unreachable scenery into something much darker. For players discovering these rumors years after the game's release, it sounds exactly like the kind of secret developers might have buried where nobody was ever supposed to look. But when members of the hit and run community actually investigated the location, the mystery began falling apart. The supposedly secret house appears to be ordinary scenery, reused from earlier versions of Springfield, placed beyond the playable boundaries so the distant environment wouldn't look so empty. Because players were never intended to reach it, parts of the surrounding terrain have little or no collision, and the location doesn't behave like a finished area. More importantly, modders examining the game found no evidence of some hidden horror sequence waiting inside. The famous warning attributed to Jimbo also appears to have been misidentified. What sounded like a threatening voice telling the player to leave was reportedly a slowed or distorted pedestrian line, while other strange audio associated with the legend originated elsewhere in the map. The screaming room wasn't a forgotten murder scene. It was unfinished geometry, unrelated sounds, and players trying to explain something the game was never designed to let them see. And that's what makes the legend worth remembering. Early console games were filled with places like this. Unfinished rooms behind walls, distant buildings with no interiors, strange audio triggers, and pieces of development left just outside the player's reach. Before every game could be data mined and dissected online, discovering something beyond those boundaries felt different. You couldn't immediately search the files and prove what it was. Someone would find an inaccessible house. Someone else would hear a distorted voice. Another player would remember it as children screaming. And eventually, those separate details became one story, repeated until a piece of unfinished Springfield had developed its own mythology. There probably wasn't anything horrifying hidden inside that house. The disturbing part is that Hit and Run gave players just enough emptiness beyond the edge of its own world for them to imagine that there was.
I hate this new area code. Like I don't have enough to remember already.
Layer 4. Sideshow Bob was supposed to be here. There's one character whose absence from Hit and Run becomes strangely noticeable once you know he was originally considered for the game. Sideshow Bob. Development material recovered years after release lists Bob among characters planned to appear, alongside other familiar faces such as Poochie. But unlike Poochie, whose unusual model survives, no known original Sideshow Bob model from Hit and Run has ever been recovered. There is no finished mission to restore, no surviving cutscene explaining his appearance, and no confirmed dialogue revealing what he would have done. All we're left with is evidence that Radical Entertainment apparently intended Bob to be somewhere in Springfield. And then, at some point during development, he disappeared. That becomes especially intriguing because of the story Radical ultimately built. Early in the game, Bart suddenly vanishes. Lisa spends an entire level treating his disappearance like a missing person investigation, questioning Springfield residents, following suspicious vehicles, collecting evidence, and trying to determine who took her brother. Eventually, we learn that Bart's disappearance is connected to the larger conspiracy. But imagine reaching that point without knowing the answer. Within The Simpsons, few characters have a more obvious motive for harming Bart than Sideshow Bob. He has stalked him, threatened him, and repeatedly attempted to kill him across the series. Yet in the game where Bart mysteriously disappears, his most famous enemy is nowhere to be found. Then, years later, development records reveal that Bob actually was considered for a hit and run. There's no evidence that he originally kidnapped Bart, and claiming that would turn an intriguing coincidence into fake lore. But the timing makes his missing role difficult not to wonder about. And that's where this mystery has to remain. Maybe Bob was only intended to stand somewhere in Springfield and deliver a joke. Maybe he belonged to a side mission that was abandoned before his model was completed. Maybe Radical planned something larger before the story changed. The surviving material simply doesn't tell us. Even modern footage showing Sideshow Bob inside Hit and Run can be misleading, because community modders have created custom Bob models precisely because no known original usable model survives. What remains is essentially the outline of a character who never arrived. His name and development documentation, a finished game without him, and a storyline built around the disappearance of the child he famously wants dead. Sideshow Bob was supposed to be somewhere in Hit and Run. What nobody seems to know is what he was supposed to be doing there. Layer 4. The hidden film that ends in decapitation. Some of Hit and Run's strangest material isn't hidden outside the map or buried in unfinished development files. One of its darkest scenes is deliberately placed inside the finished game, waiting for the players dedicated enough to find it. Scattered across Springfield are 49 collector cards, 7 hidden in each of the game's 7 levels. Finding them all is one of Hit and Run's biggest completionist challenges, but the reward isn't money, a faster vehicle, or another costume. Once every card has been collected, the player can visit Comic Book Guy, who trades the complete collection for a special ticket. Take that ticket to the Aztec Theater, and the game unlocks something described as an unreleased Itchy and Scratchy cartoon. After hours spent searching rooftops, backyards, secret paths, and hidden corners of Springfield, the player's final reward is essentially a film they were never normally supposed to see. The short is called 500 Yard Gash, and it begins innocently enough by Itchy and Scratchy standards. The two characters prepare for a running race. But before it begins, Itchy secretly injects Scratchy with a steroid. Scratchy's body rapidly transforms, giving him enough strength and speed to race around the planet multiple times. For a moment, The drugs appear to have made him unstoppable. Then, his body begins to fail. Scratchy's heart is pushed beyond its limit until it violently explodes, killing him just before he can finish the race. Itchy crosses the line instead, but the cartoon doesn't stop with Scratchy's death. When the winners appear on the podium, Itchy is standing in first place, holding his trophy, and Scratchy's severed head. His decapitated body is positioned beside him, as though a mutilated corpse can still accept second place. And then the short ends. What makes 500-Yard Gash so perfect for this layer is that the developers didn't accidentally leave it behind. They intentionally buried it behind complete card collections, created it specifically for Hit and Run, and even produced earlier versions of the short during development. A July 2003 prototype preserves a rougher version containing placeholder material and sequences that were later changed for release, meaning there's effectively an unfinished version of the hidden cartoon buried even deeper in the game's development history. None of this means the film was banned or considered too disturbing for release. The finished version is exactly where Radical wanted it to be. And maybe that's the strangest part. After everything the player has uncovered across Springfield, the game rewards the people who search the deepest with one final secret. A supposedly unreleased film about drugging someone, watching their body destroy itself, and carrying their severed head onto a winner's podium. Layer 5. Homer saves Springfield through human sacrifice. By the final missions of Hit and Run, Springfield is running out of ways to fight back. The alien spaceship is still hovering above the town, and ordinary weapons can't destroy it. Then Professor Frink discovers a solution. Nuclear waste can damage the spacecraft. Frink loads radioactive material into his hover car and prepares to deliver it directly into the tractor beam, knowing the vehicle, and potentially himself, will be pulled aboard. He tells Homer that his sacrifice could save him and his family before carrying out the attack. The plan works, and for the first time, the alien ship takes serious damage. But Frink's success also teaches Homer something much darker. Stopping the invasion no longer requires simply destroying machines or collecting radioactive waste. It requires sending something into the spacecraft that may not come back, and the people inside those vehicles begin becoming part of the weapon. Homer repeats the strategy. More radioactive waste is loaded into vehicles and driven towards the tractor beam, eventually bringing Snake into the plan as well. Snake is pulled upward with his bandit, disappearing into the spacecraft along with the radioactive payload. His ultimate fate isn't clearly established, just as the game never definitively confirms what happens to Frink afterward. But the final attempt removes almost all ambiguity about what Homer is willing to risk. Grandpa climbs into the last vehicle, realizes what is happening, and directly asks Homer whether he's going to sacrifice him for the greater good. Homer doesn't tell his father he'll be safe. He simply answers, "We'll see, Dad. We'll see." Homer then drives toward the tractor beam, jumps out before the vehicle is captured, and leaves Grandpa inside. The car rises toward the spacecraft and explodes, bringing the alien ship crashing down over Springfield. It's played as the ridiculous climax of a Simpsons game, but Grandpa's question exposes the moral calculation underneath it. Frink chooses to risk himself. Snake becomes another part of the attack. And by the final run, Homer knows exactly what happens when a radioactive vehicle enters that beam. Yet he still leaves his elderly father inside because destroying the spacecraft may save everyone else. Calling Homer a murderer would go further than the game allows, especially when several characters' ultimate fates remain deliberately cartoonish or ambiguous. But the strategy itself isn't ambiguous. Grandpa even gives it a name: sacrifice for the greater good. The aliens spent the game treating Springfield's population as expendable pieces of their entertainment. And by the end, Homer is forced into his own version of that calculation, deciding that one life may be worth risking to save thousands. Springfield survives. The question buried beneath the celebration is much harder. How many people can a hero sacrifice before saving everyone else stops feeling heroic? Layer 5. What happened to Springfield's resurrected dead? By the time Homer wakes up on Halloween night, Springfield has become almost unrecognizable. Buzz Cola has contaminated the town's water system and seeped into the cemetery, causing the dead to physically rise from their graves. Zombies wander the streets. The cemetery is opened, and radio reports describe the outbreak spreading far beyond the handful of creatures Homer encounters while driving. Earlier in the game, we already watched Buzz Cola animate the skeleton of a Tyrannosaurus Rex, so there is little reason to interpret this as a hallucination caused by the drink. Something has genuinely happened to the dead. Bodies that were buried beneath Springfield are now walking above it. Yet after spending an entire level surrounded by the consequences, Hit and Run never answers the most obvious question. What happens to all of those bodies once the aliens are defeated? Homer eventually destroys the spacecraft, and the game jumps to the following morning. Springfield is suddenly normal again. The streets are no longer filled with zombies. The immediate crisis has disappeared. And Homer even briefly questions whether any of it really happened before his family confirms that it did. That detail is important because the ending doesn't give us an easy explanation. It wasn't a nightmare. Springfield really experienced an alien invasion, and the dead really appear to have risen. But the game never shows the zombies collapsing when the spacecraft is destroyed. We never see them return to their graves. Nobody explains whether the effects of Buzz Cola wore off, whether the bodies had been destroyed, or whether someone spent the night collecting corpses from around town. The invasion receives an ending. The resurrection doesn't. And those zombies weren't simply monsters that appeared from nowhere. If they came from Springfield Cemetery, then at least some of them were once people who lived there. They had families, friends, homes, and graves that somebody had visited before that night. Imagine seeing someone you buried walking through Springfield again, only for the town to return to normal by breakfast. Maybe the Buzz Cola stopped working and the bodies simply fell wherever they were standing. Maybe they were killed again. Maybe they somehow returned underground. Hit and Run never tells us, and there's no evidence that the resurrected dead secretly survived after the ending. The disturbing mystery is simpler than that. Somewhere between the destruction of the alien ship and sunrise, Springfield had to deal with an entire town's worth of dead people who were no longer where they were buried. And the game skips over whatever happens next.
Hey Simpson, I'm feeling a mite peckish. Mind if I chew your ear?
Layer 5. The real experiment is the player. Everything in Hit and Run begins with someone watching Springfield. The wasp cameras hover over above the streets, recording people who have no idea the footage is going. Eventually, Kang and Kodos reveal the truth. Springfield has become entertainment. Their hidden cameras record human behavior and broadcast it across the galaxy as the TV show Foolish Earthlings. A reality show built around watching people embarrass themselves, hurt themselves, and behave irrationally. When ordinary human stupidity stops attracting viewers, the aliens escalate the situation. Buzz Cola makes Springfield more unstable. Weapons are introduced. The town descends into chaos because chaos produces better television. There's even a moment when Bart hears what the aliens are planning and essentially admits that he'd watch it. From outside Springfield, suffering becomes funny. And that distinction between the people trapped inside the chaos and the audience safely watching it is where Hit and Run's final disturbing theory begins. Because Kang and Kodos aren't the only ones watching Springfield through a screen. We are too. Think about what the player actually does for most of Hit and Run. We steal cars because they're faster. We destroy other vehicles because they're in the way. We smash through property, kick pedestrians, create pileups, and deliberately fill the hit and run meter just to see how long we can survive the police chase. None of those people matter to us because we know they're characters in a video game. Their accidents are funny. Their panic is background noise. If driving normally becomes boring, we create our own chaos. That's disturbingly close to the relationship Foolish Earthlings has with Springfield. The aliens observe the town from somewhere its residents cannot reach. They manipulate what happens inside and demand increasingly ridiculous spectacle when normal life stops entertaining them. We sit somewhere Springfield's residents can never reach, control what happens inside their world, and keep playing because increasingly ridiculous spectacle is exactly what the game promises us. And maybe that's why Foolish Earthlings works so well as the final mystery of Hit and Run. The game never says the player is secretly an alien, that Springfield is a simulation, or that Kang and Kodos know someone is holding a controller. This isn't hidden canon. It's a parallel the game accidentally, or perhaps deliberately, makes difficult to ignore. During the alien reveal, we even see Springfield from the perspective of a wasp camera, an external observer watching characters hurt themselves for entertainment. Then, control eventually returns to us, another external observer, watching those same characters through another camera. Kang and Kodos are villains because they don't see Springfield's residents as people. They see them as content. But for 20 years, players have loaded Hit and Run, stolen Homer's car, driven onto the sidewalk, kicked strangers, caused enormous crashes, laughed, and started again. Maybe Foolish Earthlings was never really asking why aliens would enjoy watching Springfield destroy itself. Maybe it was asking why we do.